Colleagues, we're going to begin today's business with consideration of a legislative consent motion. And could I call on Ivan McKee? Oh, he joins us remotely. Could I call on the Minister, Ivan McKee, to move motion 23736 on the Trade Disclosure of Information Bill? Just to move, Mr McKee.
Presiding Officer, the Secretary of State for Trade Policy wrote to me yesterday to
Mr McKee, at this stage, Mr McKee, sorry, Mr McKee, can I just intervene? I just want you to move it at the moment because one of our members...
Sorry. Apologies, Presiding Officer. Yeah, formally moved.
Thank you very much, because I believe Mr Finney wishes to speak against the motion. Now, is Mr Finney joining us remotely? Yes. Mr Finney?
Thank you very much indeed, Presiding Officer. Scottish Greens opposed the Trade Bill, one of the United Kingdom Government's flagship Brexit bills, because it should have marked a change in approach, empowering the UK Parliament, this Parliament and those in Wales and Northern Ireland, giving democratic oversight to all future trade arrangements. But it would do none of this and would mean the trade negotiations continue to escape parliamentary scrutiny. This emergency bill was introduced on Tuesday and passed by Thursday afternoon, and MSPs have been given less than a day to read the legislative consent memorandum, no committee scrutiny and 20 minutes set aside for a debate. None of this, Presiding Officer, is a criticism of yourself or indeed the Scottish Government. But this is a pathetic parody of scrutiny and a disrespect for our parliamentary process. The Conservatives in this chamber regularly demand additional scrutiny measures, and they're often right to do so, and they often get support from the Scottish Greens. But we can see now how a Conservative government works in practice. They've brought about a crisis of their own making and have zero respect for the role of this Parliament in holding power to account. The reason why this emerging bill has come forward is to address a potential crisis of the UK government's making. We're on a cliff edge because of the UK government's failure to negotiate a supposedly oven-ready deal, and it's worth remembering that we've been asked to approve this LCM that the UK government has announced that will ignore legislative consent decisions, not only here, but in Wales and Northern Ireland, and force through their wrecking ball internal market bill. Yet again, they are confirming they have nothing but contempt for Scottish democracy. We will not oppose it today because it is needed, but I think it's very important that these particular concerns are put on record. Thank you, President Officer.
Mr Finney, thank you very much indeed. And Mr McKee, can I ask you now to speak to the motion and to respond to Mr Finney? Thank you.
Indeed, thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister of State for Trade Policy wrote to me just yesterday to confirm that the UK Government had introduced the Trade Disclosure of Information Bill on the 15th December to be debated in the Commons on the 16th of December before moving on to the House of Lords today to complete its parliamentary process. He explained that the provisions of the bill which allow for the collection and sharing of trade-related data had been lifted from the Trade Bill, which this Parliament gave its consent to on the 8th of October. The Trade Bill is unlikely to receive royal assent this year, so the UK Government has introduced standalone legislation replicating the existing data sharing provisions to give it the powers to manage any friction that arises at the end of the transition period. The scramble to make this change at the last minute is just one more example of the unnecessary upheaval been caused by the UK Government's disorderly approach to Brexit. And on that, of course, I agree with the points that Mr Finney has made in this regard. Despite this, the Scottish Government Legislative Consent Memorandum lodged this morning sets out why we are recommending that this Parliament gives legislative consent to those parts of the Trade Disclosure of Information Bill where it is so required. The bill addresses matters where we have sought previously through the Trade Bill to protect devolved interests. It allows the Scottish Government access to trade flow data, which will help us understand better what Scotland is exporting and allow us to better target support for sectors and businesses to meet our export growth objectives as outlined in our Export Growth Plan, A Trading Nation. Unlike the Trade Bill, this bill provides some specific authority for the disclosure of trade-related information to the devolved authorities. The Scottish Government had asked for an amendment along these lines to be made to the Trade Bill, and the UK Government has committed to amend the bill in this way before it completes its parliamentary process. This bill is a temporary fix and contains a sunset clause to ensure that the provisions will expire when the data sharing clauses in the trade bill come into force. The UK Government has made certain commitments in terms of how the data sharing provisions in the trade bill will work in practice, and these have been repeated in terms of this bill. The UK Government will consult devolved administrations before devolved bodies are added to the list of authorities that can share data, and it will share the analysis of the data collected by HMRC. Presiding Officer, I apologise that this LCM has not followed standard procedures, but this is not of our choice nor of our doing. The bill offers the opportunity to resolve previous difficulties we have had in obtaining trade information and with the accuracy of UK modelling of Scottish data. And I move this motion.
Thank you very much, Mr McKee. So because of the urgent nature of the LCM, we're going to go straight to the question at this point. The question is that motion 23736 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are all agreed. In that case, I'm going to suspend proceedings until 12:20, when we will resume with First Minister's questions. This session is suspended.